Hello my lovelies, and I hope you're well this week. I've got some trivia for you in a moment, and after that hi-fi news and another hint and tip surrounding upgrading and all that jazz. But for now, trivia. And we're changing the subject and going for mathematics. This particular question, it's a pretty short one, and the question is this: how many numbers does Jonathan Rickman count at the beginning of his 1977 hit Roadrunner? Once more, how many numbers does Jonathan Rickman count at the beginning of his 1977 hit Roadrunner? Once more, folks, please don't Google or anything like that, because it'll spoil the fun, and I'm sure it's easily found, this answer, online. But I would ask you just to have a little muse, have a little think. At the end of this video, I will give you the answer. For now, let's do some hi-fi news. And to begin with, we have Moonriver, the quite nice looking amplifiers. Have a kind of retro aesthetic, I would say, Moonriver. Quite expensive amplifiers, but this particular news story surrounds a plug-in board, which is basically a DAC module. Now, if you have an amplifier from Moonriver, specifically the 404 series, then you will be delighted to hear that you can now grab a DAC module board to fit inside that self-same amp. The add-on DAC module is based on the 9000 series ESS Sabre chip. The coax supports PCM streams up to 24-bit 192 kHz due to the limitations, says the company, of the coax specifications. There are 3 separated power supplies with low noise regulators, 2 for the ESS DAC board alone and 1 more for the analog circuit. The capacitor bank apparently is also pretty large. According to Moonriver, care has been given to the voicing of the analog output stage to match the character of Moonriver's in-house sound. The DAC board is now available for, and I only have a euro price right now. The price is €599. A link below. I'll put some other links below if you want to check out that particular board. Next, we have a new and rather high-end tone arm from Origin Live. This particular arm is called the Renown, and it features an extended hollowed yoke and bearing assembly. It includes a dual pivot bearing, inner and outer pillar, VTA flywheel, and falling weight side bias, as well as a symmetric multi-layer counterweight. All sound rather impressive, or looks rather impressive actually. Origin Live have offered this information to us, but they tend not to go into too much detail in case they give the game away. Even so, as I say, looks rather interesting, and the price I have for that, well, stand by your beds, folks. This is a biggie. £26,000. That's right, £26,000. Next up, from Luxman, we have a network transport called the NT07. This is Luxman's first network transport, would you believe? The NT07 is equipped with an audio signal processing module, an audio-focused noise suppression system, a dedicated control app compatible with smartphones and tablets, of course, and an infrared remote control. If you have a UPnP compatible network, you can select your files from a suitable NAS or streaming services like Kobo's, Tidal, Spotify, TuneIn, all the usual gear. The system itself supports sampling frequencies up to 32-bit 768 kHz PCM and 22.4 MHz DSD, which I think is the same as DSD 512. In addition to the network, HDMI input-output is also available. In addition, the system supports HDMI ARC, which means that you can hook this thing up to a TV and it will work with your TV and AV system. Price for this, well, again, relatively expensive, not as expensive as the Origin Live turn-on, gotta say, but what is, hey? The Luxman is priced at £6,500. Question for you, do you ever remember the BO System 9000C multi-disc CD player from Bang & Olufsen? It looked a bit like a speaker, vertical standing thing it was, on a stand, vertical standing on a stand. And it looked a bit weird, but lots of B&O stuff back then did. Looked interesting though. Anyway, it is back, despite the fact that it is basically a 90s product. It is back. So what the company has done is they've restored and reimagined the BioSound 9000 CD player from, as I say, the 90s, and they've paired that with a pair of BioLab 28 speakers, giving a sort of system approach. That's how they're selling this thing, as a whole system. Digging a bit deeper, Bang & Olufsen has actually sourced 200 old BioSound 9000 CD player units. They've gone out into the wild, they've grabbed 200 of these old things, they brought them in-house, and they've returned them to the same company factory in Denmark, the same place where they first created the CD player in, I think it was actually 1996. These old CD players that they've bought in, they have been disassembled. Each part has been inspected by well, not all of them, but many of the people who worked originally on the units back in the 90s. They even used the same workshop tables to do the actual restoration. Every component was then cleaned and, if necessary, repaired, tested, and fine-tuned. Color-wise, it's not quite the same. In fact, B&O has inverted the deep black and natural aluminium flashes of the original. Now, in case you're not familiar, this unit is a 6 CD changer and includes a built-in AM/FM radio, and it has a motorized glass lid, originally designed by the industrial designer David Lewis. When you switch on the BioSystem 9000C music system, as it's now called, the curtains of the BioLab 28 speakers slide aside and the speakers are ready to deliver. The position of the curtains indicate whether the beam width is in narrow or wide mode, staging the listener experience, as B&O has it, where narrow mode minimizes wall reflections and wide mode widens the listening area by diffusing the sound around the room. The music system comes with a BO remote, because the company puts BO on the front of every single word in the English language by now, I would guess. The BO Remote 1, it's called, but the system can also be controlled via the speakers themselves as well as a smartphone. So yes, that's right, there is a physical interface on top of the speakers that lights up and makes it possible to play your CDs, skip tracks, and control the volume, all that kind of stuff. Wireless connectivity amounts to a choice of AirPlay 2, Chromecast, and Bluetooth 5. Prices, well, again, high, very high. This is not cheap. You're looking at a thoroughly, professionally refurbished, as new, you might want to say, old 90s CD player which was pretty expensive when they first came out in the first place, plus these speakers and all that BO goodness. So you're looking at, and I have three prices here, 50,000 euros or 45,000 pounds or $55,000. That's your HiFi news. Let's look at a hint, a tip. This hint tip is a bit of an oldie, yet a goodie, but I still see comments, views, and questions relating to it, so maybe this subject needs another airing, hey. So I'm going to talk about upgrading your HiFi. If you do so, when you do so, it is my strong recommendation that you upgrade from the source downwards. So upgrade the turntable, the CD player, the streamer, cassette tape player, whatever is your chosen source. Allocate even more of the cash that you have in your budget to that source as well, more than the other components if you're upgrading more than one. Then you work down the chain to the phono amplifier, if applicable, then the main amp, speakers, and so on. Why do I say this? Because only the source component sees the original information, the original groove, the original data stream, whatever it is. Only the source processes that code. Only the source sees the music in its original form. The amplifier does not. The speakers do not. It is the source that accesses the vinyl record or the CD or the data. Again, the amplifier does not, the speakers do not. So if the source component, whatever that might be, if the source component messes up, if it does a terrible job of gathering in information from your piece of software, then you are stuffed. The amplifier, for example, only sees information that is passed over to it by the CD player or the turntable or whatever it is. At this point, that information is effectively second-hand. By the time the speakers get that information, that musical information is third-hand because the amplifier could mess it up if it's a poor amplifier. So the speakers are getting all kinds of rubbish by then. Hence, no new information will be added by the amplifier or the speakers. None. Zero. So let's say you've just ignored everything I've just said, which of course you're welcome to do, of course, and you spend thousands on a new pair of speakers. You have a cheap turntable, a cheap amp, and you spend thousands on your speakers. You've gone that way around. No matter, and I'm here to tell you this, folks, no matter how many thousands you spend, you will not be able to magic information out of thin air. Where do you think this information is going to come from? A top hat, perhaps, along with the rabbit? But you cry. You're going to say this to me, aren't you? But when I did upgrade my speakers, you say to me, the HiFi itself sounded a lot better. And my reply to that is, sure it did, because your new speakers are merely processing that same limited information in a more efficient, better way. It's still finite detail, but better processed by your new speakers. That's all. Your new speakers are just doing a better job with that limited pocket of information. As I say, maybe they're more efficient, more pleasing to your ears than the previous pair, yet they are only handling that same old detail. Nothing new, nothing fresh. So go to the source first. Allow it to mine as much detailed information from your software of choice in your own HiFi chain, and your entire system will be better prepared to deliver wonderful music to your ears. And on a slight tangent, if you have a turntable and you're thinking to yourself, actually, how about upgrading the turntable bits? What's the order for that? Well, this is what I recommend. First point of call, first upgrade on your turntable is the plinth. Second, the tone arm. Thirdly, not the cartridge. Oh no. Thirdly, the phono amplifier. Then go for the cartridge. The cartridge is fourth on the list. Controversial? Absolutely, to some people, of course. Now, why do I put the phono amplifier especially ahead of the cartridge? Because, folks, the phono amp is the bottleneck for any and all cartridge source signals. It's the phono amp that directly amplifies the cartridge signal. It's not the main amplifier. The phono amp does this job. You have to open up the bottleneck first to allow the cartridge signal information to flow. So you could buy yourself as an upgrade, you could just ignore what I've just said, of course, and you could upgrade, and let's say you've bought yourself a £10,000 cartridge. But I'll tell you this, if you have a poor phono amplifier, that is going to squeeze the signal into a tiny, not particularly pleasant space. And then, well, you probably only hear 10% of what the cartridge is capable of, especially at that price. And then what you do? So, no. The phono amp first. Get the most from your current cartridge. Then upgrade to a new cartridge later on. And that's it, folks. Thanks for staying to the end of this particular video. Before we go, let's give you an answer to that trivia question. And to repeat, how many numbers does Jonathan Rickman count at the beginning of his 1977 hit Roadrunner? And the answer is, well, most people count in 1, 2, 3, 4. That's very familiar, hey? But not in this case. He shouts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is what Rickman shouts at the beginning of both recordings of Roadrunner by the Modern Lovers and in his own right. Crazy Jonathan Rickman, hey? So, at least now you know. I'll be back next week, same time, same place-ish, and I hope you can join me. I hope to have your company. Thank you again for all of your support, and like I say, I hope to see you next week. Until then, folks, bye-bye for now.